Hi, everyone. This is Hal Krosman with Screenwriting U, and today we're going to be answering this question. What do you do before you write your next script? Now, my guess is that you're here because you are going to write another script, either very soon or in the near future. And you'll be writing script after script after script from that point on. So everything we talk about today will be valuable for you. Let's just jump into this. Today, first, we're going to be talking about 5 questions that can make your script great in advance. And this, again, is something that I got from A-list screenwriters. What I noticed, with most people, including myself at that time, was an idea would pop into my mind and I'd go, all right, cool, let's just write it. And sometimes I do a little bit of outlining and that kind of thing, but for the most part, you just jumped in and just went for it. When I started talking with A-list screenwriters, that's not what they did. And that's where I found out, you know what? They're doing something different. And it's one of the big reasons that their scripts are selling. So what if you knew that? And by the way, it changed how we taught screenwriting. It changed how we thought about it. And it changed a lot of deals that happened with our group. We've had over 600 writers make their first deal. And that's one of the big reasons. Then I'll give you some tips on making your scripts more marketable. And we'll analyze Shakespeare in Love. I'm sure you've seen this movie. My guess is maybe multiple times. But we're looking at it specifically from the perspective of these 5 questions. So even if we've analyzed it before from a perspective of the story or the love story or romance or whatever it was that we were doing, this is going to be different. And finally, we'll talk about the upcoming class, the 30-day screenplay that gives you the ability to write a script competently and effectively in 30 days. And by the way, let me tell you where this came from. I had a producer that I had interviewed a couple of times, so he and I knew each other fairly well. He calls me up one day and he said, hey, Hal, I like the way you think. Now, I don't know what that really meant. My assumption was, I've done some good jobs interviewing him or something. He says, I like the way you think. And I was wondering if you had a model for how to write a script in 30 days every time. And I was like, not yet. So he said, well, I'd like you to create one. So I said, hey, what's going on exactly? And his response was, he was thinking about becoming a writer. He had worked with hundreds of writers before that, and he felt like he understood a lot about writing, but he didn't really know, and he hadn't written any screenplays. So he wanted to write 6 screenplays in a row, and he wanted to write them in 1 month. And I was like, okay, so are you like quitting producing? He says, I think I'm going to take 6 months or a year off. I was like, all right, okay, let me think about it. So 5 days later, I called him up and I said, all right, I have a model for this. I've spent a lot of time thinking about it. And if you want to go through it, we'll set something up. So I gathered a bunch of screenwriters, put it together. They all went through that class. And at the end of it, well, I'll tell you the end of it a little bit later. I'll tell you what happened with it because it was really interesting what he accomplished. So we'll jump into that, towards the end. But let's just go with this. 5 questions that elevate your script. And this first one is incredibly important if you hope to sell. The first is, what is the engaging concept? Now, there's a difference between an idea that kind of pops into your head, the kinds of things that used to send me off writing, versus an engaging concept that really has a chance of selling your script. because this is basically one of the keys to selling your script. You need a concept that you can instantly hook a producer, that you don't have to sit there and tell them a big, long story, but even more important, that can be used in a 30-second TV spot or a 15-second Instagram spot to sell the movie to audiences. The objective here, it's an expression of the human condition that is both universal and unique. Make sure you get that last part. That last part is incredibly important. So it expresses an interesting conflict, and your concept becomes your short pitch. So this is the pitch where if a producer says to you, I only have a minute, or if they say, what else do you have? Let's say you pitched your other story and it didn't quite meet what they needed, and they say, what else do you have? What I would do at that point is I would go straight to your high concepts, right? It's the big hook of your story. So if they say, what else do you have? And you say, I have a romantic comedy titled Shakespeare in Love, and it's about, and now you say a 30-second hook that instantly engages them and they go, oh my God, I can sell that. You're in business. In my opinion, your concept is the most important writing you do if you're trying to sell. Now, if you don't care about whether you sell or not, that's a different thing, right? But on this, if you're trying to sell a script, if you're trying to get in the industry, if you're trying to get producers to read your scripts, make sure you have a great concept. A couple of other things here. If you're trying to build subtext into it, this is an easy way to do it. Blah, 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 not knowing that. So this blah, blah, blah here, this is what people normally say. They say some kind of log line. But what the not knowing that, there's an alien under the bed. not knowing that, there's a scheme going on that's going to put them in a terrible place, whatever it is. Blah, blah, blah. But what really is going on is da-da-da-da. And where this first came from, I was talking with the producer of Friday the 13th, Sean Cunningham, and he says, this is how I like to be pitched. One of these two. So Friday the 13th, a group of teenagers go to a cabin on a lake, not knowing they've invaded the home of a deranged killer. And back then, that sold it. So be thinking about that. If you're talking about, again, concept, you want to make it really easy. Here's the mystery that Shakespeare in Love was built around. Have you ever wondered how Shakespeare wrote the greatest love story in history? And part of the mystery was we've got the most famous writer of all time who wrote his most famous love story. The big question is, how did he do it? How does a writer go from being unknown to being one of the greatest of all time? And that may be a question you may want to be asking yourself. How do you do that? How do you go from being unknown to be one of the best of all time? And in this case, it was by writing a tragic or love story and a tragedy that he lived. So. Now, second question. How can I create lead characters that are intentional, as in they are designed to fulfill the concept? About half of the scripts that come into contest, first, you can't tell what the concept is. But second, their characters are kind of all over the place. And they may have really interesting, cool characters, but they're not specifically related to what's going to be pitched to an audience. So you want your characters to be intentional. You want them to be the best possible version of what could fulfill that concept. You also want to make sure that they're inherently dramatic, right? If they're on the screen, drama is automatically happening. So You know, the way people used to write scripts a lot was to have reluctant characters who didn't want to get into the fight. They didn't want to go on the journey, all that kind of thing. You can do that up until the end of Act One, but once you hit Act One, they need to be fully engaged. At the end of Act One, they basically, you need to set your story up so they don't even have a choice. But they need to be, who they are needs to be someone who brings drama, so that any scene that they're in automatically is going to be interesting, engaging, right? It's going to keep people thinking about that character. They also need subtext and or be ironic, right? So this means if you got subtext, you automatically have a character that exists on multiple levels. If you have an ironic character, you're having a character that's giving you kind of both sides at the same time, and they're bouncing back and forth and that kind of thing. So we're getting to see and perceive that character in a different way. And we need character subtext, right? So who are they? That must hide, or there's something they can't talk about, right? What is it that they're hiding? What is it that they're not sharing with us? And that matters, by the way. It needs to matter. They need, some kind of subtext identity. There's something about who they are that fits that. And these are just the easy ones to be thinking about this. But when you're thinking about subtext identity, like a spy has a subtext identity, right? They're presenting themselves in one way, but they're really a spy. An informant, same thing. They're gathering information, and that's going to put people in jail. Somebody with multiple personalities, they've got, an identity beneath an identity. A saboteur, an imposter, a con, a criminal, someone who's in the closet, someone who's a cheater, a chronic liar. All of these people have something going on the surface up here, and then something beneath the surface. Now, if you can design characters like that, and it doesn't have to be one of these, but if you're designing your character up front, where there is something beneath the surface that matters, that we're going to be engaged in, that's going to surprise us, all of those kinds of things, that's going to be an amazing character. And often they're dealing with an internal issue that they just can't talk about. So then there's one other. Let me get out of the way for this one. An ironic character subtext means the identity of the character is X and opposite of X. So, like, this is the preacher who can't stop sinning. If you go back to some of these, the informant could be saying, "Hey, I'm here for you, man. I want to do everything. I want to help run this place." And the truth is they're actually the opposite of X also. So just be thinking about that. How do you, whatever the identity is you've given your character, is there a way to also make them the opposite of that? Whether it's because, like the preacher who can't stop sinning, maybe really they started out as being opposite of that, and they thought if they became a preacher, they would be able to solve that problem. So just be thinking about that. Then, intentional. How do they deliver on the concept? With Shakespeare, for instance, we've got the greatest writer of all time who has writer's block, right? So first, this makes this character an ironic character, just like I was talking about. This is the person that we know as the greatest writer in history. But in this movie, what drives it is he's got writer's block. He's got to figure this out. He's got to solve it. And the love relationship became the solution. So it made that really important also. He represents Romeo in the story. Viola is desperate to be a player, right? So this, again, we have a character who is showing up as one thing on the surface and one thing beneath that surface. She absolutely loves poetry, and she represents Juliet. Sorry about that. She represents Juliet. So she is first, she actually steps in as, as the lead male, Romeo, and then by the end she turns into Juliet. But she's an ironic character also, and she has subtext going on. Now, Will is living two lives, right? He's got a love story with Viola and the play he's writing, both of which kind of benefit from each other in one way or another. Viola is living two lives. She's the future wife of Wessex that was set up early on, and she's the actor Thomas Kent. So both of them have this two lives thing going on that makes them more interesting and more compelling. Third question: what's the transformational journey, right? And remember this, there's two things you need to know about the transformational journey. The first one is it's what the audience lives, right? As we are going through that, even though there are things happening all over on the screen and things going on with the characters and that kind of thing, we are living the transformational journey. We are going through this journey with this character, and if it's done really well, this is all we really are thinking about during that period of time. So there's that. And then the second thing is transformational journeys make up 70% of the movie trailers. So if you go to a theater, I went to a theater last night, and you're sitting there watching the trailers, in general, 70% of them will tell almost the whole story. And what they're telling you is that transformational journey. So this is really important, not just to the story, but also to the chance of that story selling and how they're going to market it. So the transformational journey, this is an important change that the character can't make in the beginning and only succeeds after a series of difficult trials where they face major fears. And this is important. A lot of times people will tell me, oh, it starts to here and it goes to here, and that's all. But they leave out that the character can't do it in the beginning. Even more important, they leave out all of these difficult trials and these major fears that the character is having to face, right? So this has got to be an incredibly difficult journey that the audience will be sitting there going, I have no idea how they're going to make it through. How are they going to survive this, right? And every time they come up against another difficult trial and they're facing a major fear, we're back to, is this character going to make it? Are they going to be able to survive? So on top of that, the journey must deliver powerfully on the concept. It must deliver powerfully on the concept. And that's for two reasons. The first one is because when the audience is watching the movie, right, they came there because they saw the trailer and they went, wow, I want to live that story. Now we come to the movie. If the story that we end up living is a different story, you're going to have a lot of people that are disappointed. And you don't want that. You want people coming out and going, oh my God, that writer was incredible, the way they told that story. But the second of the two reasons is because if you pitch it to a producer in the beginning, they ask you the transformational journey, which is one of the questions they often ask. And then they get the script and it doesn't deliver on that pitch, it's over. So the pitch and the transformational journey must work together. Incredibly important. So in this case, transformational journey, Viola goes from being an observer of plays to ultimately playing Juliet in the greatest love story ever. And of course, she does that by being in the play, by being impersonating a man and having her own greatest love story ever. Shakespeare goes from having writer's block and no love in his life to living and writing the greatest love story ever. So both of these two have gone through a transformational journey that is actually pretty interesting and fun to watch. Question number 4. How do I build subtext in at the structure and plot level? Again, this is one of the things that your audience is living. They're constantly experiencing what's underneath the surface. So you've got to give them something underneath the surface that is meaningful. Easy question is, what are they hiding? What is it these characters are hiding that they're not talking about? And second one, what layers could be revealed? Now, both of these imply there's something going on under the surface. The layers imply that the story is about to change in a big way, because what we've been seeing up till now is basically just the cover-up. Revealing layers is one of those things that keeps an audience engaged, keeps them wondering what's going to happen next. So you want to be asking things like this. What is the main course of events that requires hiding things? As in, you're designing it up front so that this movie is going to be about hiding things. And that's important. That's, a lot of times people will say, well, aren't I doing something kind of obvious here? I watched a movie last night where I knew from the beginning that the story was about hiding things. And the entire time I'm loving it. It was fun. It was interesting. It was compelling. It had me wondering. It had me looking beneath the surface and trying to figure it out, right? So you want to be designing that in from the beginning. That doesn't usually just show up later on. If you design it from the beginning, then you already know where you're writing. You just saved yourself 3 or 4 drafts trying to figure it out. This could be things like a con movie, a criminal enterprise, a hidden agenda, a scheme or deception, crime and investigation, right? Any of these all fit that. But it also could be something where somebody, like we just saw here, is hiding who they love. And they're playing a game in order to build that relationship and going through all kinds of interesting things. So while this movie, by the way, I've actually had some people tell me it's not about deception. It is on one level. So just real quickly, it's a love story, right? But there's a major deception going on. Viola is pretending to be Thomas Kent, right? They're deceiving, and by the way, Will is working with her on that. First, he gets tricked by it, hard to believe. But second, then what happens is he then joins in and they start deceiving Wessex. They're deceiving the Queen. They're deceiving their audience, their specific audience. All of this is going on through most of the movie. And especially when it comes to the parts about deceiving the Queen, who quickly recognizes what's happening and plays along with it because, it means something to her. So if we took this part out, if we just took all of these out, the whole pretense that's going on, the deception and all that kind of thing, I think this movie would be a lot harder to write. I think it would be a lot harder to have people be deeply, deeply engaged. They would have to come up with something else that would have done it. But just look at it. It's like really what's going on in this case is we, the audience, are connected with them. We know what's happening. We're playing along with it. We're enjoying how they're deceiving Wessex. We're enjoying the play between them and the Queen and how she recognizes what's happening and interacts with it. We're enjoying how they're deceiving their audiences in that case, right? It's like, it's not something where we've been deeply deceived. It's something where the other players there, the other actors are being deceived. So you also then want to ask yourself this question. What will make this script as interesting and as engaging as possible? And this has always been important. But in the last 10 years, especially since streamers have started, it's become so much more important, right? Once you got to a situation where on any streamer, you've got 1,000 or 2,000 different movies there, that they could just say, you know what, I don't really like this movie. Let's go to something different. Once you hit that spot, it's a whole different world. But before that, we were still, and for the 10 years before that, we were involved in this, right? People have 500 channels. They also have a cell phone in their hands. I don't know if you can see that. They have a cell phone in their hands. They're interested in all kinds of things, and your job is to get them more interested in your movie. And every producer knows this is the battle they're up against. So it needs to have at least one of these things on a big picture level: intrigue, mystery, irony, or an emotional dilemma. And probably have at least two of those things. Your job is to make this something that is so compelling that a producer can't stop reading, that an audience can't stop watching. And you can do that in so many different ways. One of the reasons I used Shakespeare in Love on this today was so you would see it's not just about doing this in a thriller genre. All of these things can be built into other kinds of movies. So here, intrigue, tricking Shakespeare, then the actors, and especially tricking Wessex. This was all intriguing. Mystery, how did Shakespeare write the most famous love story of all time? Irony, the most famous writer of all time has writer's block. Something we never knew and may not have been true. Who knows? Nobody even knows if Shakespeare really truly existed or not. And then emotional dilemma. They love each other deeply, but she has to marry Wessex. And you could say, well, she doesn't really have a choice. They do have choices. They could have run away together. She could have done something to cause Wessex disgrace and had him choose not to marry her. There are other things they could have done, right? But it's like, this is an emotional dilemma that she at least is going through, and ultimately he is in the very end. Shakespeare is. So what's your plan? And this is part of why everything we do, every time I do one of these, hopefully by the end of it, you've got something that you could put into practice, that you could make use of. Having to do with this, my first question to you is, how many scripts are you planning to write this year? Right? Look back at what we just talked about. Everything we just talked about, you could probably brainstorm in a couple of days. But what most people do, again, is they get the first part of the idea and then they just go into the writing. But if you could brainstorm that, the whole thing that we just talked about, which is all the things that make it intriguing, that make it pitchable, that cause actors to want to sign on, that kind of thing, and you could get that done in a couple of days, then what's possible for you? And then the other question is, what if you could write a script in 30 days? Let me go back to this producer that I was talking about at the beginning. This was his thing. What he wanted to do was he wanted to write a script in 30 days and be able to pitch it around town. That was his original vision. And he wanted to see if that script really could sell. So part of my job as I was creating the class wasn't just to create something that was about how do you get words on the page in 30 days. It was about how do you create something that gives the possibility of really truly being able to sell something, that gives you the chance to be able to create this script very quickly and have it have a chance of success. Let me tell you what happened. Uh, he showed up for the class, and I was worried, by the way, in the beginning that I was going to create this class and this guy wasn't going to go through it because he didn't have time. But he stopped everything and did every single assignment of that 30-day class. And at the end of that, he had a script. Then I didn't hear from him. And at that point, I was like, okay, this class works. Everybody in it everybody but one guy had created a script in 30 days. Pretty amazing. Great. So we started presenting that to the public. I didn't hear back from the producer for a year. And at the end of a year, he calls me up and he says, hey, I really have to say thank you on that. He said, what you did changed my life. And I was like, wow, really? What happened? Did you sell the script? And he goes, oh, he says, way more than that. He says, here's what I did. He said, once I saw that I could do it, I took a year off and I wrote a script in 30 days. And then I spent the next 30 days traveling. And then I wrote another script in 30 days and I spent the next 30 days traveling. At the end of a year, he had written 6 scripts. He had already made deals on a couple of them at that point. And he said from this point on, he could both write and produce because he knew he could write anything he wanted inside of 30 days. That made a big difference for him. So stay with me for a couple of minutes. Let me just walk you through that class, see if it might be something that you might want to take. Again, our purpose on this is really a couple of things. It's having it be, instead of going, oh, every time I come up with an idea, I have to make a decision. Am I going to write this in 3 to 6 months? Instead of taking 3 to 6 months, what if you could write a script in 30 days, right? And instead of just writing and just, seeing what showed up, what if you knew up front that script had a chance of success? So let me walk you through this so you can see. This program is about 4 things, really. First, it's about the step-by-step of writing your script in 30 days, right? How do you do that? If you're going to truly write a script in 30 days, and we've actually had people write them in 15 days once they learned this model, but if you're going to truly write it in 30 days, how do you do it? What are the steps? Second, it's about putting a high-speed writing model into action every day. And once you get inside this industry, you're going to find that writing at high speed is something that is highly valued. It means you can meet deadlines. It means that producers are going to want to work with you. It means that anytime there's a moment where something is changed, you're coming back with the new version very, very quickly, right? So it matters to producers in this industry, and that makes you more valuable. It's also about mastering this 30-day model so that you can use it from now on. What if every script you wrote from now on, you could get done in that period of time? And then it's about empowering your writing and having fun. If you're going to write in 30 days, that is a lot of work, but if it's empowering and if it's fun, it's such a much, much better journey. So this class has 30 lessons in 30 days. Every single day you're going to be doing something. And by the way, every single day you're going to be learning and growing as a writer. On the video library, video 1 is about how to master the 30-day script, right? The keys to creating a great concept up front. Video 2 is about launching the 30-day script. How do you launch into it? How do you do it in a way that has you be able to get all the way through it? Video 3 to 5 is about writing the actual acts. And then videos, number 6 is about how to finish powerfully. This is incredibly important, by the way. There's lots of people who start scripts and never finish them. There are lots of people who have 5, 6, 7, 8 scripts that they've started and didn't get past first draft. So you're going to learn, how do you finish powerfully? How do you think in a way to do that? The normal, excuse me, let me back up here. Normal price on this program is $299. Again, it's a 30-day class. You're learning and writing every single day. For the first 20 writers, and this is our special, for the first 20, you can get in at $149. So I wanted to make that really easy for you. That's half price. The only time we've ever done that with this class has been on Black Friday. So if you want to be able to write scripts in 30 days and be able to get them done very, very quickly and really have a chance at creating multiple scripts this year, 3, 4, 5 beyond what you normally would have created, come join us for this. This class is a bit of work, but the other side of it is it's incredibly rewarding. You will be such a much better writer. You will also just consider these possibilities. First, let's say you've written 3 scripts so far. What if you knew that by the end of this year, you can be up to, say, 9 scripts instead of 3 or 7? What kind of a difference does that make for you? Also, what kind of a difference does it make for you going through the process of learning and mastering and getting better at this? With every script you write, you become a better writer. And depending upon if you're in a writer's group or not, you could go from being the least experienced writer in there to, inside of 1 year, being one of the most experienced writers. The last thing this does that I think is incredibly important is when you get inside this industry, you will suddenly see a whole different world that this gives you, right? It's like we have had writers who have been hired by producers because they had the ability to write very quickly. We had one writer who was given 32 days to write a script that was going into production. They had everything else set up, and the writer that was hired on it originally backed out. And so our writer, she was given 32 days. She finished the script and 11 drafts during that period of time inside of 30 days, and they went into production, and that movie got made because of her. Right? That gave her a huge reputation. She, after that, has done at least 6 other scripts for producers that she's been paid on every single one. She's had 4 movies made because she had this skill set. So this can make a huge difference for you as a writer, both from a confidence perspective and from the chance of being able to work inside the industry. All you got to do to join us, go down to this link right here and write this down real fast: bit.ly, bit.ly/write-my-next-script. So no capitals, no spaces. Again, it's bit.ly, bit.ly/write-my-next-script. And if you're wondering if you should do this, just think about what life is going to be like on the other side of it, right? How much more confident are you going to be as a writer? How much more capable will you be? How much faster can you write scripts, right? And how many more scripts are you going to get done because you mastered this model? So if you'd like to join us again, right now is the time. The price, once we hit 20 writers, the price will bump up. So at the present moment, again, you can get in for half price. Just go to this link that's right there, and hope to see you in the class. So with that, listen, I want to say thank you guys for hanging out with me today. I hope every time we do this kind of thing, you get something valuable, something that moves your writing forward. and that you're able to apply those insights. And if you join us for any of our actual classes, we take it 10 to 20 times beyond that. So I hope things are going well for you. This is Hal Crosman with Screenwriting U, wishing you the absolute best with your writing. Bye-bye, everyone.